And we have on the right-hand side of your screen, again, this is, you might not recognize by the name here, but this is Sodek on Magic Online, synonymous with graveyard strategies in Modern, plays a lot of Dredge, played some Hogak back in the day, and 5-1 in our event. I believe Sodek is here because he's qualified for the Pro Tour next weekend. So, decided to take a little bit of a pit stop in Chicago, play some Standard. And on the left-hand side of your screen is Ethan Solomon playing some Orzhov Control. We saw a little bit of a similar-ish Orzhov deck not too long ago in the hands of Joel Lissette. I believe it was round 2 we saw that. And we'll have to see how this matchup goes. This is going to be about a lot of sweepers here, Mason.
Yeah, the Orzhov control deck, it gives up counter magic that we see like No More Lies and things like that. And in exchange for losing those kind of cards, you gain things like Kaya, Intangible Slayer, but also just like more kill spells if you want them. Like things like, if you wanted to play them, you could play like Anointed Affliction and things like that. None in the main deck here today, but looks to mostly just be mono white with a few black cards.
Yeah, and then, specifically for this matchup, we talked, I mentioned the sweepers. Ethan has in the main deck, yeah, that's right, the main deck, 3 copies of Temporary Lockdown, 2 Sunfalls, and a Farewell. So that is, at least for game 1, going to be looking for those cards. Not sure if these players have, scouted, know what each other's playing. So, so assuming that Ethan knows that Tomasz is playing Boros Convoke, probably would want to mulligan aggressively towards one of those sweepers. And, that is going to be the name of the game here for Ethan.
Yep. And these mono white decks, you see them in the hands of people like Autumn Burchett in the top 4 of the Pro Tour about 1 year ago now. They're pretty good at just kind of clogging up the battlefield. And I think, I would guess it's probably okay against the Boros Convoke deck. Devin, what do you think? You've been someone who's played a lot of the Convoke decks in various formats and been grinding a lot of Standard. How do you think this matchup's going to line up?
So this is I have played a lot of the Boros deck, but the mono white or Orzhov deck has not been super popular over the past, couple of weeks or whatever since the rise of Boros. So it's not a matchup that I have a ton of experience, but, looking at this deck list, if I'm playing Boros, I would not want to be playing against somebody who has 3 copies of main deck Lockdown in addition to their 5 and 6 mana sweepers. So, we see Ethan taking a whole bunch of mulligans, and I'm kind of wondering if Ethan does know what Tomasz is up to and is actually just aggressively mulliganing for like a lockdown or something like that.
That would make a lot of sense. As we are going to see Eiganjo into Warden the Inner Sky for Tom.
Yeah, that is one of the more, one of Tom's best 1-drops, because especially if you can follow it up with something like Novice Inspector or Voldaren Epicure, couple that with the Gleeful Demolition, we're going to see a reinforcements here that's going to create a token, and Tom's going to be able to use the Warden to go ahead and get a counter and scry 1. And really looking for one of those payoffs. We talked about the Boros Convoke deck. It's kind of like it's kind of a weird deck because not only is the mana base, that's kind of the talk of the town. The mana base is a little awkward with this Boros deck. You're trying to cast multiple. You have 16 to 18 1-drops that all require certain colors, and the mana can get a little awkward. And you kind of also really want to find a payoff, something like a Knight Errant or Immodane's Recruit or something like that.
Yeah, Warden the Inner Sky doing a lot of work, and Ethan knows that and plays Lay Down Arms with the Plains for turn in order to take out That was a Shadowy Backstreet, the Surveil Land turn 1, so we wouldn't be able to answer a 2-drop, so we were all good in that regard. And Lay Down Arms is a card that, we saw get a lot of hype when it first came out. Hasn't seen a ton of play, but might be kind of well positioned here in the Standard format.
Absolutely. We kind of had this discussion off stream earlier. We were talking about the removal spells against Boros Convoke and how Cut Down feels like not the best card. It's good against exactly Warden, but past Warden, you don't really want to be trading your 1-for-1 removal spell with something that replaced itself, either Reinforcements or Epicure or Novice Inspector. So the removal doesn't line up super well against those cards. So past Warden, and we see Knight Errant of Eos is going to pick up 2 Sanguine Evangelists. That's got to be pretty good for Tomasz.
Yeah, that is a good one for both ending the game and playing through removal spells. So pretty powerful. It looks like we are going to be disguising something.
Ayo. Little morph action. So, immediately whenever something is disguised, we're both, I'm sure, taking a look at Ethan's deck list. There is 2 copies of Unyielding Gatekeeper, if we can get that up on the screen for the lovely folks at home. who may not have seen this card, because it's not a card that a lot of people have on their radar, but it's basically disguised as like the morph mechanic. So you can play it face down as a 3-mana 2/2 with Ward 2, and you can pay 2 mana to white and a colorless to flip it up, and when it's turned face up, you exile a permanent, kind of like a Skyclave effect. If you controlled it, it flickers back. If they controlled it, they get a 2/2.
Yeah, and honestly, a 2/2 just kind of nice here, holding back all of these excellence. And it's going to be interesting to see. If you answer the Sanguine Evangelist, a bat will replace it. So they'll get a 2/2 and a bat, but losing the battle crown, that is pretty real. But something we can do at instant speeds here is reveal ourselves off the disguise.
Yeah, and we're tapping 3 mana. There is an Imodane's Recruiter. I'm going to assume this is lethal damage, but we will have to see. Okay, so quick math here. I think they're all 3s except the Knight, which is a 6. Does that sound right?
That sounds right to me. And it looks like Ethan has the Wandering Emperor, and that's why we didn't disguise to get rid of the Sanguine Evangelist. So the battle cry does happen, but we do gain 2 life. And looks like
sorry, the Recruiter I think is a 4, right? Because it's pumped by the Evangelist and the itself. So that would be 3, 6, 9, 12, 16 coming in, I think.
Perfect. We're at 17. Just where we need to be.
17 is the magic number. And, we talked about Ethan F2 having 2 copies of Sunfall. There's 4 lands in play. If I'm assuming that there is one in hand, which that, as he said, like picking up the Unyielding Gatekeeper, that's really one of Ethan's only outs here, because, we talked about something like Temporary Lockdown. Lockdown's not going to answer the Knight or that Recruiter. So even if a Lockdown comes off the top, there's still going to be 2 lethal threats in play.
Yeah, and I think Ethan has Shadowy Backstreet, the white-black Surveil land in hand as one of the lands. So I don't know. There's another card in hand that could be Sunfall, but it might be a top deck moment here, as we all look like we're figuring out what we're going to name off Thran Portal.
Thran Portal is just the best land in Standard. I don't know if you know that, Mason, but
it's the best of something, as Ethan is packing up his cards, conceding there to Tom. Just too much of a quick start there, and that is one of the advantages of this Convoke deck, is just how quickly it kills the opponent in just a blinding quick fashion while still being able to play a pretty long game. Let's check out the sideboard though really quick and see what Ethan might be doing here. In the sideboard, we have 3 Doorkeeper Call, 3 Duress, 2 Knockout Blow, 2 Depopulate, 2 Long Goodbye, 2 Outrageous Robbery, and 1 Ashiok the Wicked Manipulator. Devin, what do you like against this deck?
So most of the sweepers for Ethan are in the main deck, though. However, he does have 2 copies of Depopulate in the sideboard. Those are definitely going to come in. Past that, I don't really think there's a ton else here. I mean, we talked about the spot removal already not lining up that well against the Boros Convoke deck, so I don't think you want to go towards something like Long Goodbye. Knockout Blow doesn't really have a lot of premium targets. Duress, there's 7 total spells in Sodek's deck, so probably doesn't want that. Doorkeeper Thrull, on the other hand, I think that is, that card is almost tailor-made for this matchup. I actually kind of missed that one. So what this one shuts off, for those of you who don't know, it's 2 mana 1/2, and it says artifacts and creatures entering the battlefield don't cause abilities to trigger. So that stops Knight Errant of Eos, Imodane's Recruiter, Valderan Epicure, and Novice Inspector. And there's probably even some that I'm missing.
Yeah, a very powerful card, and sort of one of the best one of those. And having Flash also really changed the dynamic, Sodek, if there was something like a Torpor Orb type card that had to be in play ahead of time, you might be like, oh, okay, I'm going to play something else this turn, like maybe a Sanguine Evangelist. Instead, maybe slam something like Imodane's Recruiter and then gets got by the Doorkeeper Thrull. So very powerful card. Let's check out what Sodek has in his sideboard. We have 3 In the Festivities, 3 Get Lost, 3 Invasions of Gobakon, 2 Wedding Announcement, 2 Lithium Barrage, 1 Break the Spell, and 1 Knockout Blow. What do you like here and why, Devin?
So you probably want some answers to Temporary Lockdown. So I know that I saw Sodek tweet maybe I think it was last week that he played 1 Break the Spell specifically for Temporary Lockdown. So that's a nice cheap way to answer that. May want to go towards a couple of Get Lost. I don't know if you want all 3, but that is a card that kills Temporary Lockdown as well. And then if you want to go a little bit longer, Wedding Announcement to kind of fight through the Wraths, and then Invasion of Gobakon, very good at taking one of those expensive Wraths, like making Depopulate cost 6, Sunfall cost 7, so on and so forth.
Yeah, I feel like Invasion of Gobakon is one of those cards that, has really got underappreciated just how powerful it is against some of the cards that are best against these Convoke decks. And then also lets you, build up kind of a better board presence off less things so that when they do get to their Wrath, it's not as impactful because you only had 3 or 4 creatures in play doing the thing. But let's head down to the feature match area, as it does look like the players are starting right away there. as we are going to be seeing, I believe that is Obscura Storefront.
It is. It's the it's Terramorphic Expanse for those of you who know that reference. It's ETB. It sacrifices itself. You gain a life, and you get a Plains-Zero Swamp put onto play. I think it's Plains, Swamp, or Island for that one. That's the Esper aligned one. So that's going to go ahead and pick up a swamp here for Ethan.
No, and that's why we can't have Brainstorm in Standard. Just too strong.
True. The fetch lands. Field of Ruin too. Brainstorm, end of turn, untap, upkeep, Field of Ruin. Let's go.
Yeah, just two guys. We do see a Novice Inspector here for the turn. Passing on back.
And what do we got here for Ethan? It's like a Virtue of Persistence. That'll be the Lochthwain score and half of that. It's going to go ahead and clean up the 1/2. Now, we talked about removal spells not being great against the things that replace themselves. But if it's a Lochthwain Scorn, you're gaining a little bit of life and you're getting, that enchantment later on in the game that you can maybe play towards. So it's not as bad.
Yeah, it's definitely something where, especially on the play too, you're more happy doing that. When you're on the draw, if there's something like a Bunny Corn in play that could have been threatening to, kill you or hit you, it becomes a lot worse. And we see that play draw dynamic come down as we do see the Ambitious Farmhand enter the battlefield, search our deck for Plains and add to our hand and then shuffle it on up.
Yep, that one's going to go ahead and make sure that Ethan can hit all of his land drops on time, especially like we talked about, just wants to make sure we can hit all the land drops to get to those Sunfalls and Farewells.
Yeah, these big white control decks typically try to do things like this, or there's some incidental card that kind of gets in the way for a little bit and gets some incidental value. We see this, we see the Restoration of Eiganjo in the deck. There's lots of cards like this that are just trying to make sure that Ethan hits the land drops, but doesn't have to play, 27, 28 lands or any sort of draw spells to find them, as we might see normally. As it does look like Tomasz is trying to figure out exactly how he wants to play this turn, has a couple options available to him here. What do you think is going through his head right now, Devin, if you were in his seat?
Well, probably thinking about the possibility of temporary lockdown because we're jamming this Warden. And I have to imagine that maybe Tomasz had a 3-drop that he was thinking about jamming and chooses to maybe go ahead and... Okay, so there's actually a Get Lost in hand. This is going to be kind of an interesting sequence here where if Ethan does have the temporary lockdown, Tomasz can actually target the lockdown with the ability on the stack, and he gets to keep all of his stuff in play, which means the Warden retains the counter and he gets to keep the clue as well.
Field of Ruin for the turn there for Ethan. Tomasz cracks the clue, draws a card. How hard is it to kind of walk the line among these sort of, wrath effects as a deck like Boros Convoke, where, typically you're trying to build up an attack? Is this something that, is easier said than done? How does it go normally for these decks?
So the Boros Convoke deck having access to 4 copies of Imodane's Recruiter makes it a little bit, I'm not going to say easier, but it allows you to play the game in a different way where you can maybe hold on to some stuff and then have this one big burst turn where you're just like creature into Imodane's Recruiter and, here's 1,000,000 damage, right? So, that's kind of what Tomasz is thinking. I did see a Recruiter in his hand as well. So I think it looks like the grip is Get Lost, Recruiter, Knight Errant, and I can't quite tell what the last card is. Looks like maybe a second Get Lost.
Yeah, I think he might have 2 of those in his hand here, as we are going to see a Scry from Warden. Looks like Ethan wants to respond to the Scry and play the Wandering Emperor and just minus here.
And that's going to kill the Warden. And then, Scry's still going to happen for Tomasz. So 3 creatures in the battlefield with the Knight Errant in hand. But yeah, I mean, this is much, much different than what we saw last game, right? Tomasz just, pressure, had the haste creature as well, was able to just get all of this stuff, all of this massive, massive pressure. And, looks like Tomas's draw is a little bit slower this time, and that's exactly where Ethan wants to be in this game.
Yeah. Ethan with the Plains for turn. Looks like we're having some double face card. I think this is the Restoration of it's Wedding Announcement, excuse me.
Yeah, Wedding Announcement going to go ahead and allow Ethan to go a little bit wide. So we're choosing to main phase the Doorkeeper Thrull because we want to get a counter on it. Does make sense. Also, I actually kind of like the main phase too, because you don't want, if you hold up the Thrull and Tomasz can just respond to your Thrull with reinforcements. So I think it does make sense to main phase that, and you want the counter on it anyways.
Yeah, I think the Wandering Emperor really moves the needle from making it a question to okay, I should just make my friend bigger. I'm going to get attacked eventually, and I just want to have the biggest things I can when that time comes. We saw last game, we didn't die from the alpha attack, but we had nothing left over, and it put us in a really awkward position.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the Tomasz, I guess in terms of sizing, does have the biggest creature in play with the Regal Bunnicorn, but doesn't really have any good attacks past that. If you attack with both, the Thrull can eat the vampire, the human can trade for the evangelist, and that would even shrink down the Bunnicorn further. So Tomasz really has to be a little bit careful on how he chooses to navigate this. So we're going to go ahead and take down the Thrull. That does allow an attack with everything at the Emperor. You can actually even send two things at the Emperor. So you could even just send like Evangelist bad at Emperor and then maybe Bunnicorn to Ethan's face.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if we maybe just send the bat with the flying and then go everything face as well. Kind of depends on how Tomasz wants to play it out. But yeah, he's got a pretty big presence here, and it still has enough to rebuild and put pressure on if temporary lockdown comes down because of the second get lost in hand.
Yeah, Chad actually brings up a good point here. So Imbodane's Recruiter typically gets cast for 3 mana, and it just ends the game on the spot. But a lot of people may not know this. That card does have a second mode. It is an adventure card, and the adventure half is 5 mana, make 2/2 vigilances. And if the game is going to be about trading this many resources, then that certainly could be a factor.
Yep, Train the Troops is a pretty powerful effect, and I'm surprised how much it does come up in these standard games, especially in the late game where maybe you're top decking and suddenly you make 2/2/2s, and suddenly, on the next turn after that, your next spell plus Imbodane's is threatening lethal again.
Yeah, Tomasz actually I believe, had 2 copies of Recruiter in hand. So, if we're trying to train those troops, we need to start hitting our land drops now. Second wedding announcement is going to give Ethan a bit of a better board presence here. Going to make some tokens, and if Ethan can maybe untap with those tokens next turn, flip the other announcement, then make the 2/2s and get a really big board presence here.
Yeah, it looks like both players have a copy of Get Lost in hand. Looks like Tomasz is doing a little bit of planning on, hey, do I want to play this Imbodane's push, guarantee some amount of damage, maybe even force the chump block here? Like you're mentioning, the wedding announcement, the more creatures you have in play, the better it's going to be at clogging the board up. I'm going to have to play into a Wrath at that point. So a lot of questions going on in his head.
Absolutely. Tomasz going through all of the options. I mean, you can do something like play Imbodane's Recruiter, send with everything. 2 human tokens can maybe double block the Recruiter. One would probably have to chump block the Bunnicorn. And then from there, if you chump block Bunnicorn, chump block Recruiter, that's still getting in for 6. But yeah, like you said, Tomasz is really just trying to figure out how he wants to navigate. So we're going to go with a Knight Errant for 3, which still leaves back the Bunnicorn to attack. So I like that. And the one thing about Knight Errant is if you're not doing it for the full 5, 3 is the magic number because that hits the Sanguine Evangelist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you kind of want to be doing 1, 3, and 5 most often. Those are sort of the numbers that you care the most about. Every now and again, you do it 2, but if you have the choice, you typically want to get that third one over just having 2. So it does look like we have a couple hits here, trying to figure out exactly which ones we want to get and play the game out over multiple turns. That's one of the things I really like about the Knight Errant of Eos in this deck is, it involves you committing more to the board, but it actually kind of like refills your hand so that while you are playing into a Wrath, you're kind of building up for the next one to fight through. So it looks like we have a Novice Inspector plus Sanguine Evangelist as the picks.
Those are both pretty good. Another Sanguine Evangelist. Able to get a ton of power onto the battlefield, replace itself if a Wrath does happen. Now, I say replace itself if a Wrath does happen, but just actually not true because all of Ethan's Wraths exile anyways, except I guess the Depopulates in the board don't.
Mm-hmm. Looks like Ethan's maybe finally time to get losting that bunny, decides to pull the trigger on it. The maps are actually, we talk about it a lot from the control deck. They can be problems, right? Like maybe, something becomes a threat you have to answer again a little bit later, but in the early game, it's fine. Against Tomasz's deck, the 2 map tokens actually come up a lot between Gleeful Demolition and Ward in the Inner Sky.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you don't want to give this deck free artifacts. It's really good at utilizing them.
Mm-hmm.
We're going on a map. We're mapping onto the human token. That's going to depopulate. I think we want to keep that one.
Yeah, I'm interested to see if we want to make, 1 big token or 2. Looks like we do want to keep one of the map tokens maybe around for later to try and, not flood out.
So we've kind of reached the point in this game where Tomasz now knows of the existence of a Wrath. But if you look at Ethan's battlefield, Ethan doesn't have to cast the Wrath next turn, right? We have 4 2/2s in play. We're kind of I'm not going to say we're outsizing Tomas's board, but we're keeping up pace, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Ethan is now forcing Tomas into a position where he maybe has to overcommit a little bit more into the face-up Wrath, and Tomas knows about the Wrath. So this is kind of like this weird kind of chicken game back and forth, and we'll have to see, how much Tomas wants to extend. Does Ethan want to fire off the Wrath? So on and so forth.
Yeah, and it's only getting worse next turn, right? We're only going to get one wedding announcement trigger on the next turn, but there'll all be 3/3s and a single 4/4. That's going to make it really hard to attack through, even with an Immodane. So I'm going to be interested to see kind of how we want to play around this, because the get lost does get a little tricky in combat, right? Like, we can maybe pop this wedding announcement, and then everything might die where before we thought we were going to eat it. So I'm curious to see how he wants to play this turn. Really only having 3 mana being a lot of the problem here. We have the 4th in hand, but we really want 5 right now in order to, like Immodanes plus Lost or something like that.
Right, or potentially get to those train troops.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, Tomas can start maybe utilizing these artifacts like the map or something. Is that the break the spell? That might be the break the spell in hand too. I think I saw a card that I didn't quite recognize. I think that might be what that is. I don't know if we can get break the spell on the screen just so I can take a look at the the piece of artwork. We can also show the people at home just because it's not a commonly played card, just a nice little enchantment hate card for the that is break the spell. Nice little enchantment hate card to be able to pop. Not only, like you mentioned, it does also kill wedding announcement, mainly here for lockdown, but can maybe if Ethan lines up some kind of double block, right, where like double block knight, block novice inspector, and Tomas just says, okay, blow up your wedding announcement, you lose all 4 of your tokens. That could be a pretty back-breaking turn.
Yeah, and maybe force the Wrath in a time where we don't want to, like you were talking about before. So it does look like we use the map, solve it in Epicure, put the token on the bat, and then put the Voldaren in the graveyard. Not really interested in having that right now.
We got a land here and a Sanguine. So Sanguine's kind of a cool way to split the difference where, if a Wrath, again, we know everybody knows about the Depopulate. If that is cast next turn, at least we get a 1/1 back out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And now Ethan's got
in hand for Ethan, trying to figure out if he wants to cast it. These bats kind of are making it a little bit more awkward than he would like.
Right, and Ethan's kind of think about, do we want to fire off the Depopulate? Do we want to attack first to get a card off of the announcement, or would we rather just pass and have a 3/3? So there's a lot of things going through Ethan's mind. I would assume you probably would rather just have the card, and it looks like Ethan is going to agree with that. Now, you got to assume that the Wrath is coming if we're going to just send with all the tokens. So Sodek is just going to make some blocks here. Double block there, maybe take 4 damage, and then likely end step fire off that Wrath, which we're going to reset the board, and Ethan is going to have 2 announcements. Tomas is going to have a 1/1 off of the Evangelist. But, even after a Wrath, with Tomas having 2 copies of Recruiter, if a land comes off the top, and we just go, train troops back-to-back turns.
Yeah. Got a long game ahead of us here, and that is one of those big strengths of the Boros Convoke deck, is you can continue to play games where normally a deck like Mono Red or something like that might fall off. You just have a lot of longevity left in you.
Tomas looking at Ethan, he's like, "Yeah, I know you're going to cast the Wrath. Just cast it." That was funny.
It's funny too that Ethan has Knockout Blow in hand, which. We're using Field of Ruin here, I think, just to be like, yeah, let's go grab our second black so that we can use our Virtue if we draw a land on the next turn. But it might end up coming up a lot in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's picking up the creatures. We all know what's happening. So, going to leave back 1 bat off of the Evangelist. And then, assuming Ethan remembers the trigger, we are going to get a card off of the announcement end of turn. Yep, there it is. Flipped announcement, draw a card. So we got Ethan has a couple of cards in hand. I think there's 2, maybe 3. And then we talked about Sodek. Just, look at this board position, right? Ethan is ahead on mana, down on cards. But, again, if Tomas ever finds land 5, it's, Ethan is going to need essentially a Wrath every turn at this point with those the multiple train the troops.
Mm-hmm. We saw Tomas here crack the clue. Trying to maybe find the land to do trade the troops, or maybe just find some double spell type play. Looks like we did find the Sundown Pass. We're going to play Recruiter.
Interesting. He's Recruiter flooded to the point where he's like, you know what? I don't need to train this many troops.
Yeah, and I kind of like this, especially, we didn't see what Tomasz drew there off the clue, but if you drew another Imodanes, just playing this first one and being like, hey, get you to 12 and make it so that, I can maybe do something like Imodane next turn if I draw the right cards.
Okay, Thrull main phase. We're going to map onto that, see what we can find. That's an Emperor, and Ethan is going to keep that on top. Interesting.
Worth noting, this Thrall is a 4/6, I believe. Thanks to all the buff. Yeah, so you just can't really attack through it. It just has to get lost at this point. You can't even Eiganjo it, at least not cleanly.
Yeah, I mean, look at this. So Tomasz can just go get lost, play another Recruiter. That would be 3, 6, 7, 8 damage. Put Ethan to 4. That could be an okay turn.
Yeah, and that would make it so the Wandering Emperor is actually not that good of a draw. Now, we know Ethan has Knockout Blow in hand, and that's going to help a little bit with everything going on, but it's still not going to be enough, I think, to get us out of the woods, especially if Tomasz has the third Imodanes in hand.
Yep, so we're going to go for the Get Lost. That does make a lot of sense. It's kind of funny how we talked about all these train the troops, and now that I actually think about it, it's probably been correct over the past 2 turns to just cast the Recruiter half of this. It looks like, okay, we're going to go for a map instead. We're not going to go for the Recruiter here.
Well, we just knew we were going to hit the land. Now
I see.
Just do it all.
I see. Yeah, I think Tomasz was pretty okay with firing off the first Recruiter because he knew he had the second one, because he was like, well, worst case scenario, I could just train troops next turn. But now, that he hit the land there, I wonder if you're in Tomasz's spot, do you actually want to hold the Recruiter this turn? Or what are you thinking here? My instinct is probably still just cast it.
Yeah, I think it is probably just cast it and start pressuring. If I have something like Resolute Reinforcements in hand, I might be more willing to hold, just because that lets me, kind of develop my board later. It looks like he's got something that has no way, and it does look like it's a Resolute Reinforcement in hand. So that makes a good amount of sense to me, just to hold that up. There you go. As we are hard casting the Knockout Blow on the bat. So it's going to make it so we don't lose any life from the Imodane, because we gain 2 from the Knockout Blow. And it looks like Ethan's just trying to clog the board up and, let the Wandering Emperor make, 4/4 Samurais.
Interesting why we would choose to kill the bat over the Recruiter.
I think the idea is that we can block this. I think the plan was we're going to play this and pop the maps. Yeah, now at minimum we have a 4/4 Samurai.
Yeah, okay. This makes sense. Also, don't forget, there's that Virtue Persistence over there. I kind of forgot about that, but Ethan does have 7 mana.
Yep, agreed. We see Ethan hit a Plains off it, puts it on top, has another Doorkeeper Thrull on top of his deck. We now have a 5/5 Samurai here, and, Tomasz' deck is good at going around this sort of thing, but this puts him in an awkward spot where if he wants to attack and leave the Wandering Emperor around, it might minus to answer something and get some life back, or put more 4/4 Samurais in play.
Yeah, so now here as the board sits, assuming Tomasz does not have anything to play prior to the Imodane's Recruiter, like it's just, air plus Recruiter, we can go play Recruiter, the Samurai is going to block the Recruiter, and that would be an attack for 7 damage. So, I mean, it doesn't take a lot past that for Tomasz to just present lethal this turn.
Yeah, honestly, I guess if you even draw lands, you can just do stuff like train the troops here. We have that Kiss as well that we talked about that can blow up an enchantment. So the plan might be that, hey, Ethan's flooding out. He's probably going to tap out and play the Virtue next turn. Maybe I can do something like train the troops, hold up my Kiss, pass. Ethan slams, hopes to stabilize, makes a Samurai. I blow up the Virtue, I Imodanes, and then even if, I don't kill him this turn, he's got nothing left.
Tomasz going into the tank here. We know about the break the spell. We know about the Recruiter, and I think I might have saw a Barrage in hand too. But I might be crazy here. Correct? Maybe take a look and see if we can get a look at Tomas's hand again. But if it is Barrage deals 5, right?
Yeah, Barrage deals 5, so it would kill the Samurai. I feel like if we had, it looks like we're going for the Knight Errant as the play.
It's probably not Barrage then.
Yeah, it might be a Voldaire and Epicure. I have not got a quick look at it myself.
All right, so we're going to Knight for 2. Interesting night for 2 instead of 3. Oh, is it because... So, funny enough, Sodek only plays 3 Evangelist, and I think we've already gone through all 3.
Yeah, I think we've gone through all the Evangelists and maybe even the Emodanes.
I guess you'd still hit Emodanes, yeah.
Yeah, we have 1 Emodanes left in the deck if my count's right. So just decided to do this, maybe with the hopes of like cracking the clue and playing a 1-drop as the turn plan as well. We're like getting Resolute Reinforcements. If, we don't hit that, we crack the clue. Clearly thinking through the entire turn here. It has a much better knowledge of what's in the deck than we do. Played this deck a lot.
I believe that is Warden Reinforcements.
I believe so as well.
What's the find off of that? Tapping 3 mana. And we are just going to cast the Recruiter. Okay. Mm-hmm. So my guess is here, 2 Recruiters and Emperor, and then the 5/5 at Ethan. It's going to guaranteed kill the Emperor. Worst case scenario for Sodek, you just lose a Recruiter, trade that for the Emperor, and then Ethan takes 5. No harm, no foul. But yeah, it's interesting because we kind of talked about how the Recruiters were going to allow Tomasz to kind of not trying to think of the best way to put this, but just, train the troops and generate some tokens that way. And, we've decided to go ahead and cast the Recruiter. So, I guess I was going to say if Ethan finds a Wrath, but we knew about the top card was Doorkeeper Thrull, so that's not really a possibility.
Yeah, and Ethan's in a really awkward spot because the Virtue doesn't do anything, right? Like, it doesn't do anything at least until the next turn. Even then, there's not a ton of things for it to get back that super matter, right? We have this Doorkeeper Thrull, which is kind of big, but we don't have anything like a Castle Ardenvale to make a bunch of mana. Yeah, you see Tomasz be like, okay, yep, this thing does it on your upkeep. That's not going to matter.
I mean, the Thrull is a, 3/5? So the Thrull's still a pretty good blocker.
Definitely a good blocker, but it's just such an awkward position to be in.
Yeah, it's like Ethan is basically 1 mana short of where he wants to be, where you just be able to, Thrull plus Virtue. But the fact that only having 8 mana, you can only either play your 2 mana card that might have an impact to the battlefield in terms of blocking, or you can play your 7 mana card that does nothing. So kind of, tough spot.
Yeah, it feels like a forced play, and it feels like Ethan just needs to maybe like attack with the Samurai, put Tomasz to 9, hope Tomasz is on, just the cards we know and nothing else that really matters, and just hope that we can like draw cards off the top of our deck that are good.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't even know if there's anything good to get back with the Virtue in the first place, right? There's not really any creatures in Ethan's graveyard. I guess Tomasz, you can get, I guess you can get Inspector out of Tomas's graveyard, which is pretty good, right? Next turn.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But the awkward part is they are, I don't know, I guess anybody's going to have 2 winning announcements, right? Yeah. It is still just such a slow, arduous grind. Yeah. And this is why the Convoke deck is one of the best decks in the format and puts players to a real test.
Oh, for sure. So Tomasz is going to force the issue of the Doorkeeper Thrull that we knew about. And Barrage, that does do it. It's only 4 toughness. Yeah, there's a 3/4. So Barrage is going to go ahead and take care of that. And follow-up play is a Warden. So Warden can go ahead and start getting some counters on that thing, doing some scries, try to find some spells. Don't exactly know what the last card is for Tomasz.
Yeah. I was deciding, do I want to throw away a 4/4 in exchange to push 4 damage and put Ethan to 3? Tough little spot there. We finally don't know what's on the top of Ethan's deck, but you also have to worry about, wrath effects here from Ethan. So seeing Tomasz do a little bit of math, figure out, does he want to throw away the creatures? Does he want to get a scry on set up for next turn? Maybe guarantee a lethal that way.
Yeah, but I think we've reached the point of the game where Ethan almost certainly has to draw Wrath. There's nothing really like a 1-for-1 removal spell, Wandering Emperor. None of that stuff's going to do it at this point. It's got to be a Wrath.
Yep, agreed. Did you see Ethan draw for the turn? Let's see what it is. It's, I think, a wedding announcement.
Wedding announcement? Yeah, I think that's what it was. Although, the first wedding announcement he played was in a double face card. It's like he had the checklist card, so it may not be a wedding announcement.
Yeah, I don't know.
Is it a lockdown?
If it was a lockdown, it would be good, but not great here because we would still have 6 damage in play.
We would also lose our 5/5. That's rough.
Yeah.
Ugh.
And it looks like we are going to extend the hand there. Congratulations to Tomasz. We believe that was probably a win-and-in situation here. So we're going to see how that plays out after this round. But great match there, and it was really exciting to see that Boros Convoke deck in action. We're going to be curious to see if we have a backup feature match still going. We did have Dom Harvey playing Slowgurk over there, so we're going to get the note from production. But Devin, that was a really fun round.
Absolutely. We get to see the Boros Convoke deck full on display. And what was nice about that match, too, is, we kind of get to see the best of both worlds, right? The Boros game 1 was basically just Boros kind of doing Boros things. And then game 2, we saw its resilience, its ability to just kind of put multiple things onto the battlefield, generate a decent amount of card advantage, which you wouldn't associate normally with a Boros deck, and was able to really grind out all of the threats that Ethan was able to provide.
Yeah, a very exciting match and was very well played on both halves. We're going to try and head on down to the feature match here now. We have Dominic Harvey on your right playing 4-color Legends versus Tim Hatch on your left playing Esper midrange. Both of these players are 5-1, and we think live for top 8 here.
Yeah, I'm guessing this is a win-and-in. I'm pretty sure. I haven't looked at the standings, but I'm fairly confident that X11 is, relatively safe depending on breakers. So good chance this is a win-and-in. We get to see Dom, not too long ago earlier, was able to, to kind of get it done. And Dom actually took a loss to the Blue-Eye Control deck. That's when we saw Dom. So Dom's trying to get his revenge a little bit. And this is game 3. Dom's got a Shieldred. Tim's got what's funny? Rafine, as powerful it is not the best against the Shieldred because it is a force draw.
Yeah, it definitely can come back to get you there. As it does look like we're in the middle of game number 3 here. It looks like both players have had a lot of interaction back and forth. I see Dom's graveyard with some removal spells and creatures. Same with Tim's. So looks like we're in the midst of things here. It does look like Tim has ticked up the Wandering Emperor, put a counter on the Samurai, and it's just figuring out, do I want to attack with how much am I going to connive? And Dom's there waiting, tapped out, like, let me know. I'll remember my shielded trigger when the time comes.
Tim lining up some mana here. I believe there is a Restless Anchorage kind of chilling in the mana base over there. We're trying to figure out how to tap. Tim's doing some tapping. We got mana being tapped. I repeat, mana being tapped. That is a Denic Flashback.
Yeah.
So the flashback side of this thing, not really. It's kind of a weird card because it doesn't really have anything to do with the front side. But the flashback is 3/2 flyer, and whenever one or more creature cards are put into graveyards from anywhere, you investigate. And then if it would be put into graveyard exile, it's got that clause on it. So pretty powerful card. If we can, it says anywhere, right? So if you discard a creature card to Rafine, that will trigger the flashback Denic.
Yeah, and it looks like that's what happened here. So we discarded a Fairy Mastermind and a Shattered Spire from Tim off the connive, pushing that Samurai up to 5 power. Dom double checking that that's how it works. It is a weird interaction, but it is how it works. Dom, no stranger to Esper, played Esper midrange at Worlds this last year. So somebody who definitely, knows his way around this and has actually been competing in a lot of the standard pro tours, that we at large have not needed to care a lot about because there's just no reason to. We didn't have any other standard tournaments ourselves, but good to see him in the streets here now when everyone's really excited for standard, playing this exciting deck.
Yeah, there was definitely a while or a certain period of time where only a very few select people had to care about standard, and now it's kind of nice that we all get to care about it because I don't know about you, Mason, but I've been having a ton of fun playing this format.
Yeah, I think Standard's really fun and a great time. And, one of the better formats, I would say, typically in Magic, they put a lot of work over there at R&D working on this format. And, we just haven't had a reason to really play it. But that has changed now with the RC format. As it does look like Dom's just going to draw past the turn. Sit to Tim. Tim's going to lose 2 life to the shielded trigger. Dangerously close to dying.
Yes, Tim at 10. Doesn't want to crack that clue. But I mean, it kind of feels like, at least at this point, the only thing that Dom is holding on to is that Shieldred, because I can't quite get a good look at the mana base, but correct me if I'm wrong, it kind of looks like there's 3 Zeotaurus Proving Grounds. I don't think I see any Plazas or anything like that in Dom's mana base.
No plazas right now. There's the 3 Zeotaurs, like you said, the Otawar, and we do have the 2 Relic of Legend. So color-wise, we're okay, but we don't have one of those high utility lands in play that would make it really hard, actually, for the Shieldred to go down. I know Dom's list had a good amount of removal in it, so it might be a situation where Dom's trying to get sneaky in combat between all the connives and everything. You see a little bit of an eyebrow raise there from Dom. Just wanted to do the math, sees that the Dinnick is going to get connived on, knows that 6 life is going to leave Tim hatched here. So if Tim does not find an answer to this Shieldred of the Apocalypse, it is going to be game over for him. See Dom really taking a think, trying to be like, what is going on here from Tim that he would want to do this? And do I want to maybe cast a kill spell on this Dinnick now and just prevent the connive?
Yeah, we'll have to see exactly what we tried to do here.
Yep. Remember, the connive offer fiend is a forced draw 3, so that is going to put Tim down to 6. And I think that's what Dom is. Yeah.
Upstairs, baby.
Lava Axe could never, Shieldred the Apocalypse, best burn spell I've ever seen. But I think this is a big sign to Tim, like, okay, Dom has something, and it looks like Tim maybe picked up a Tishani's Tidebinder, which would be a great way to stop this Shield of the Apocalypse from dealing the last couple points of damage.
Yeah, so worth noting the Tidebinder. It's interesting with the Tidebinder, where if what ends up happening is the Rafine has to finish resolving. So discard is part of the resolving of the Rafine. The Shielded Triggers goes in the stack, and then Tim would have an opportunity to respond with that Tidebinder. We're actually going to discard the Tidebinder. That's kind of shocking.
Yeah, this might be a sign that maybe Tim is trying to set up actual lethal. I haven't been able to do the math yet because I was waiting to see what the connives were, but it looks like we have 5 on the ground, 6 in the air, and then another 6 in the air.
So 12.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
Yep, you're right.
So this would be a forced trade of Shieldred on the Samurai. So that's kind of what Tim is thinking. Now, it's a bit risky, though, because even if Dom does trade for the Shieldred, if we just have another copy, then that would essentially, that would be enough. And we'll see what Dom has here. Dom's thinking, Dom has something like another Odawara.
An Odawara would be a very clean way to get out of this. If Dom wants to move to blocks on the Samurai as well, and then do something like Urtai the Samurai, Dom can use Shieldred to pay thanks to Relic of Legend, so that the Get Lost doesn't actually beat us. Oh, sorry, No More Lives, beat us. As it does seem like Dom realizes something is up over here from Tim if he's willing to attack like this and play this way. So we do see Dom.
Kind of scary to go to 2 life against an active Shieldred, especially with the Rafine and the clues in play. Now, I guess we haven't I don't think we've used the Emperor from Tim yet, have we?
I think we did. I think that's maybe how. Combat? Okay. I it's possible. I think I missed up for a second there. I was trying to fix some technical issues on my end, but regardless, here I think this is what Dom had. Dom has the Urtai, and he's trying to figure out: am I supposed to block this Samurai and then have the ability to pay, or not? Does Tim have the No More Lives, and a player of Dom's caliber is going to go into the tank? He knows this is the last probably decision of the game that matters, especially with a discard of a card like Tishani's Tidebinder. He might also be thinking, can I even win if Tim has the No More Lives and I block with the Shieldred anyways? Looks like Dom's decided I'm going to go for the Urtai. He saw No More Lives get discarded. He saw Tishani's Tidebinder get discarded. He's calling your bluff, Tim. And then he knows the Urtai will make Tim draw a card, killing him on his turn with the Shield of the Apocalypse trigger. Oh,
my goodness.
You gotta be careful here in the streets against Dom Harvey. He used to grind a lot of these series, known to make top 8s, and playing stuff like Worlds at Magic, he's at the top of his game right now.
Yeah, very, very interested to see. Tim discarded that Tishana's Tidebinder. Now, granted, Dom did have the Urtai anyway, so it kind of wouldn't have mattered, right? If Tim kept the Tidebinder, Tim plays the Tidebinder on the Shielded trigger, Dom Urtais it, Tim draws an extra card. It's still probably enough. So,
yeah, and you see Dom realizes his Shieldred is going to die to this Go for the Throat here, so he's not going to get the lethal on the Shieldred trigger unless Dom has something that can protect that Shieldred right now. But luckily for Dom, the Samurai will be killed from the Urtai. He might be able to attack with it.
Crazy stack, by the way.
Yeah. Very wild game here. As Tim is going to get to investigate from that creature dying, going to connect with Dom there, down 7 points. So Dom is at 5. And if he has chump blockers, Dom might be dead. We know we at least have the Emperor.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I don't think we've used the Emperor because the Shieldred, Yeah, I don't know. I don't think we've used the Emperor yet.
Yeah, I think that actually makes sense, because I know before I said I wasn't sure, I thought we had, but thinking back on it, the Samurai attacked for 5 last turn, and we discarded 3 spells, so it doesn't make sense. So it does look like Tim has something like Fairy Mastermind in hand that's going to be providing another blocker. So if Dom has double kill spell, it looks like he might have the win against Tim. I don't think... Actually, that might be a Reckless Anchorage in play. I can't quite get a tell. So...
Yeah, Anchorage in play, and then I think, like we said, the last card's Mastermind. So Tim presenting 2 blockers against that Urtai to make sure, at least covered against 1 removal spell. So we'll have to see, Dom extending the hand. That's going to be Tim advancing. What a crazy match that we walked into there, Mason.
Yeah, that was a really wild one. I'm going to be interested to see, and talk to Dom later about that one and kind of get an idea of what was going through his head there, what he was trying to play around, because it does seem like, it's very risky to give him the Connive 3, but it is almost your most clear route to victory, right? Like if you stop it there and just get hit in the air for a little bit, you're kind of in the same spot, and it's not like getting much better with the Wandering Emperor in play. So it was a very tight game. It was very exciting. Even though we only got to see a couple turns of it, that was a great one to watch.
Yeah, I'm thinking that maybe if your plan is to let Tim draw the 3 cards, maybe you respond to the Rafine trigger, target something else, then let the Rafine trigger resolve, just so there's less windows for Tidebind or anything like that. So a very, very complex and interesting, board state. Very, like you said, curious to see what Dom has to say about that one, but a fun match nonetheless.
Yeah, I wonder if almost the play is you have to see through the multiverse and be like, Rafine trigger on the stack, Urtai, your other creature that isn't getting targeted, draw 1, hope it isn't something that kills me, my Shieldred, and just hope that I, draw 6 or take 6 from the rest there. Either way, what a great game. And if you want to see more action like that, make sure to click the follow button right now on Twitch. And really quickly, I want to talk about our other events coming up if you want to be playing against players like Tim Hatch, like Dom Harvey on the tour here. We have some events coming up. Our next one is in Minneapolis on the 20th in April for a modern 10K showdown. Showdowns are our events that take you straight to our end of the year championship. We've expanded this year from 16 to 24. That means there's more chances to play on our 30K PTQ, which you can qualify via these events and our leaderboard. On Sunday, we're going to have a 5K legacy trial. We understand legacy players that you don't have, as many events these days. We try to provide them for you. Hopefully you'll come out and play. We love Legacy here on the event, and I cannot wait personally to see that. After Minneapolis, though, we're going to go to Indianapolis on May 11th and 12th. We're going to have a double showdown weekend. We're going to have 4 people joining our championship, Devin. 10K Modern Showdown on Saturday, and then you and the friends going on down there for the team showdown on Sunday, Standard, Modern, Pioneer. You and your 3 friends, you and your 2 friends, will all qualify. 3 friends. Well, Devin, they're all your friends, because I know you're friends with Twitch chat and they're friends with you. So no matter what, you're going to have 3 friends joining us at the end of the year for our 30K PTQ. So that's going to be a very fun event. Make sure to come on down to that. It's going to be an exciting time. But we're going to take a very quick break. We are pretty deep into this round, so we're going to have more Magic here soon for you and see some win-ins for our top 8, which we're going to cover as well tonight. So don't leave. We'll be back in just a couple minutes.